Hello and welcome to another pen video from me, Penultimate Dave. So I have here another inks comparison video, and this is Scribo inks comparison number 1. So I think with that, let's swab up some of these inks. So I get a lot of questions on how I do these ink videos. So I decided I would add this to the front of each of the ink videos. I put links in the description, but I know some of you watch this on TVs or mobile devices, so you don't get to see this. So first off, the paper is the number one question I get asked. What paper do I use for these ink comparison videos? So this is the original Tomoe River. This is 52 GSM, and it is the white, not the cream, the white. Where possible, I try to go for the white because the cream can actually change the color of the ink just a little bit. So this is Tomoe River 52 GSM in the white. A lot of people get confused as well because I have what looks to be a grid on this page, and it's actually an Oxford Optik pad. These are the pads that I actually use when I'm writing my writing samples for pen reviews or in my currently ink. So they have these little squares up here. I just use that because it's a good guide for me when I put this very thin sheet of Tomoe River over. I can actually see squares, so it helps me write a little bit sort of straight on the page. Not always, but sometimes it does. The other thing that I also have is I have a bottle of water, plain water, and I dip my nib in here. So for consistency, I use the same fountain pen, or I guess it's not a fountain pen, it's using a fountain pen nib though. This is a 3D printed pen from William Shakour in the UK. So he prints this material 3D, and it has a number 8 size Bock nib which I can unscrew, and you can see there. So it is just a dip pen holder for a number 8 size Bock nib, and the idea is I want to have consistency with the writing sample. So I use this, I dip it in the ink, I write, and then I will dip it in here and I will rinse the nib off several times and I will dry it, and then at that point I will then go on to do the next ink swatch and the next writing sample. So there you have it. That's how I do my ink swatches. So I just wanted to show you that here. Now on to the ink comparison video. So the first ink I have here, it is a sample. All of these Scribo inks will be samples, but this is Scribo Arancio di Sicilia. So I think let's do an ink swatch. And you can see here, this is quite a nice orange colour. And what I will do is I will do a second pass over the top half just to show the difference between what would be a wet or a broad writing nib or a dry or a narrow writing nib. So this is Scribo, and it is Arancio di Sicilia. And having problems spelling Sicilia. The next ink is Scribo Rosso Chianti. So we'll do another ink swatch here. And you can see this is a very lovely red colour. And I would have to say definitely a wine colour. We'll do a second pass over the top half, and that will show the difference between a wet or a broad writing nib and a narrow or a dry writing nib. So this is Scribo, and it is Rosso Chianti. That's a very, very nice red ink, and I want to say I can already see some sheen appearing. The next ink here is Scribo Rosso Melograno. So we'll do another ink swatch. And again, this is another red. And I have to say, I was starting to like the first red there of Rosso Chianti, but this one is actually looking even more inviting. So we'll do a second pass over the top half so that you can see a wet or a broad writing nib or a dry or a narrow writing nib. So this is Scribo and it is Rosso and it is Melograno. That again is quite a nice red ink there from Scribo. The next ink here is Scribo Classico Sepia. So we'll do an ink swatch here. So this is going to be a very brownish coloured sepia coloured ink. And we'll do a second pass over the top part to show the difference between a wet or a broad writing nib and a dry or a narrow writing nib. So this is Scribo and it is Classico Sepia. And I would say that that's a bit of a darker horse-nut, chestnutty brown coloured ink. And then the last ink on this comparison video is Scribo Nero. So we'll do an ink swatch. And it will be interesting to see how this one looks when it's dry, because I do have a few black inks and they tend to go a little bit lighter. So we'll do a second pass over the top half, show between a wet and a broad writing nib and a dry and a narrow writing nib. So this is Scribo and it is Nero. But so far that's looking like quite a nice black ink. Okay, I think let's take a look at these inks now that they have dried. So the first ink here is Scribo Arancio di Sicilia. And this is a really nice orange ink. And I'd have to say, I am actually really liking this. So can you see a difference between a wet or a broad writing nib and a dry or a narrow writing nib? Yes, you can. There is quite a huge difference there that you can see if I bring it up close. Is there any shading going on? Yes, there is a bit around the pulled area. You can see the two splotches there as well. Is there any sheen? Well, you don't typically get sheen on orange inks, although you can do. And I'd say that it's wanting to try and sheen, but maybe there is a slight sheen there, but it's not a huge amount. So I'd say it's not really a sheening ink. The next ink here is Scribo Rosso Chianti. And I'd have to say that this is quite a nice sort of magenta colour. It is sort of a nice reddish pink or pinkish red. And I have to say it is quite nice. Now, can you see the difference between a wet or broad and a dry or narrow writing nib? Yes, you can. There is quite a difference there in colour. You're also seeing some shading going around in the pulled areas. Also these two splotches there as well. So you're definitely seeing some shading going on. Is it a sheening ink? Again, I want to say it's trying to sheen, but it's not there yet. So this I wouldn't say is a sheening ink. The next ink I have here is Scribo Rosso Melograno, and I have to say this is actually quite a nice colour. Now, this went on, you'll remember, quite a bright red, and it's actually now dried into more of a pinkish pastel red. Although the wet writing sample here looks a little bit more of a, maybe a hot pink. So can you see the difference between a wet and a dry writing nib? Yes, you can. Not as much as the previous two inks. Can you see some shading going on? You can see some shading in the pulled area and also these splotches here. Is it a sheening ink? Again, I want to say it's almost there as a sheening ink. It's just not able to bring out the actual sheen. It's getting very close. It's just not what I would say is there to being a sheening ink. The next ink here is Scribo Classico Sepia. Now, can you see the difference between a wet or a broad and a dry or a narrow writing nib? Yes, most definitely. There is a huge difference between the two here. Is there shading going on? Yes, there is shading around the pulled areas. You can see a little bit there as well. Is there any sheen going on? Now, yes, there is. It is subtle sheen, but there is some sheen on that pulled area. So there is a little bit of sheen. Not a massive amount, but a little. And then the last thing here is Scribo Nero. Now, if you've watched my black inks comparison videos, you will have noticed that black inks do sheen a lot. Now, can you see the difference between a wet and a dry writing nib? Yes, you can. It's not as pronounced maybe as Scribo Classico Sepia, but you can see it. There is shading going on in the pulled areas as well. Is this a sheening ink? And yes, it is a sheening ink for sure. You can see there, it has got some lovely gold sheen going on to that ink. So there you have it. That's my Scribo Inks Comparison number 1 video. If there's any of these inks that you like, do let me know in the comments below. Likewise, if there are any other inks you would like me to check out, then do let me know in the comments below. So that's my Scribo Inks Comparison number 1 video. Thanks for watching. Please like, comment and subscribe, and I'll see you on the next pen video. Bye bye.